Yo, what's up everyone? Today we're going to look at LAW084 from chapter 3 to until chapter 6. So as you know, by the chapters itself ada beberapa benda yang akan diulang lah sebab masa midterm hari tu pun ada masuk chapter 3 dan sebahagian daripada chapter 4. So untuk chapter 3 and 4 saya takkan masuk mendalam sangat. So without further ado, let's go. First, chapter 3 is about the system of government in Malaysia. So kita ada 4 system of government. Firstly is democracy, which is outlined in Article 119, which outlines the voting age has been lowered from 21 to 18. And this protects fundamental rights of citizens here, which is under Article 5 to till 13. Secondly is parliamentary. The parliament is comprised of 2 houses, which is the House of Representative and also House of Senate. And under Article 45, the House of Senate is tak silap saya ni composition of House of Senate, and also for Article 46 is the composition for House of Representative. Oh, one more thing, boleh bawa ni lah Federal Constitution. Yang paling baru is warna hijau lah as of now. Okay, so there are a few criteria in a parliamentary system. The first is the separation of power. This is one of the highlights of parliamentary system, which is in Article 43 Clause 2. Mind you, Malaysia uses the flexible separation of power, and it is outlined under 43 Clause 2. Secondly is to maintain confidence. This is largely upon the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has to maintain confidence of the Parliament. If not, they can remove the Prime Minister and the Cabinet members via a vote of no confidence under Article 43 Clause 4. Third is security of tenure. The tenure of a Prime Minister is not secure because of the confidence that has to be maintained by him and the Cabinet. And this is also outlined in 43 Clause 4. So this is the implication of the vote of no confidence lah. And it can also cease to command. The vote of confidence will cease to command the vote. Sorry, if the Prime Minister cease to command the the confidence of the Parliament, they can impeach him ataupun remove him by a vote of no confidence. Fourth is the popular mandate. Popular mandate is basically the kepercayaan Parlimen terhadap Prime Minister lah. So dia kena maintain a steady macam belief lah by the Parliament members upon him. And fifth is dissolution. Dissolution can be done by the Prime Minister if he wants to avoid the vote of no confidence. So what happens is he will ask the YDPA to dissolve the Parliament early, prematurely. Okay. Third is federalism. Federalism accommodates unity and autonomy of state legislature. And a few of the features of federalism is first, the association of states. Association of states is under Article 1 of the Federal Constitution. And association of states is the unification of previously independent or some semi-independent states but retain certain independence in other aspects. Secondly is the demarcation of power. So demarcation of power is different from separation of power, because separation of power is pembahagian, but demarcation of power is pengasingan kuasa. So it means that the three branches of government must have a clear and also obvious separation of power and also demarcation of powers, and the borders of each branch punya kuasa must be obviously shown and marked. Okay, and let's look at what happens if the federal legislation and the state legislation clashes. Okay, under Article 75, the federal legislation will prevail if there is a conflict against the state legislature. And let's look at the Parliament power over the state legislature. So under Article 76 Clause 1, the Parliament can enact laws onto states under three criteria. Three criteria. First is to implement international treaties under Article 76 Clause 1A. However, if it affects Islam or the special privileges of native Sabah and Sarawakians, they must consult the necessary parties, but the duty to consult does not necessarily follow with the duty to obey. So dia hanya perlu mendengar je lah consultation, tak wajib pun untuk ikut. Secondly is the uniformity of law. To uniform laws between states lah senang cerita. So this is under Article 76 Clause 1B, but there are 3 exceptions to this requirement. First is only if the substance is already applied in a state. So if the substance of the law has not already been implemented in a particular state, then the parliament cannot legislate and create laws that have to be followed by that particular state macam tu. So kalau benda tu dah tak ada daripada mula, the parliament has no power. Secondly, it does not apply to Sabah and Sarawak. This is under Article 95D. And third, it is voluntarily for West Malaysian states on land and local government. However, the parliament can interfere lah. So this is in practice. Yang tadi tu saya cakap in teori saja. Under 76 Clause 4. Lastly, by the request of the State Legislative Assembly. So 3 benda ni adalah cara untuk parliament untuk legislate for the states. Okay, now we're looking at the supremacy of the constitution of this book right here. So Article 4 Clause 1 states that the Federal Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and any law that is inconsistent with the doctrine set up by the Federal Constitution is considered void. Okay, and if there is conflict, macam saya cakap tadi, if there is conflict between two legislations between the federal and also the state legislation, of course the federal, which is the Federal Constitution, will prevail, and except under Article 76, 79 and also 150, the parliament also cannot interfere with the State Legislative Assembly, because there are certain substances that are given special access to the State Legislative Assembly to legislate over. Macam tu. Okay, let's look at how we can amend the Federal Constitution. So the amendment power is largely given to the parliament, and it is under Article 159, Article 2B and also Article 161E. They can amend by a 2/3 majority vote in the parliament, and also only out of the 3 articles that I have mentioned, which is Article 159, Article 159, 2B and also 161E, only Article 159 that does not require consultation before amendment. So the other 2 articles require consultation before amending. If I'm not mistaken, 161E is about the safeguard of privileges of Sabah and Sarawak, and then the Article 2B is about altering borders between states. So dua benda ni kena ada consultation. Okay, what happens if the states do not comply with the Federal Constitution? Well, under Article 71 Clause 3, the Parliament can make laws to ensure compliance by the states. Let's look at some case laws. We're looking at the case of Muhammad bin Daud and others against the government of Malaysia, in which in this case there was a conflict between the section in the Penal Code and the section in the Undang-Undang Syariah Negeri Terengganu, kalau tak silap. So masa tu dia ada 2 interfering legislation yang digunakan oleh pihak yang prosecute Muhammad bin Daud ni. So the issue is whether or not kedua-dua ni, it is to determine which legislation should be used in that particular case. Macam itulah. So that is the case of Muhammad bin Daud and others against government of Malaysia. Okay, itu adalah untuk federalism. Now we're looking at constitutional monarchy. The YDPA is rotated among 9 rulers, and this reflects the unity of the people. So sebenarnya kan kita tahu yang dulu sebelum kewujudan Prime Minister lagi, kita punya negara ni, kita punya federation ni dipimpin oleh YDPA dan juga sultan-sultan ataupun Malay rulers kan. So they maintain the system of YDPA to reflect and also as a symbolic for the unity and also the kesatuan rakyat di Malaysia macam tu. Okay, let's look at how the YDPA is selected. Okay, now mind you, This selection is only for the 9 Malay rulers, the 9 sultans, and the Yang di-Pertua Negeri only spectates. They do not take part in the selection, in the rotation. Selection saya tak pasti. Okay. To be a YDPA, they must have the support of at least 5 other rulers of states, and they cannot hold the office for 2 consecutive terms. Okay. And the voting method is outlined in the third schedule, and it goes like this. There are 5 steps. First, the keeper of the ruler's seal will ask the next candidate whether or not he is ready to become the YDPA. Keeper of ruler's seal is the penjaga cap moho diraja kalau tak silap. Secondly is the distribution of ballot paper. Ballot paper is the voting paper that only contains one name in the paper, which is the next candidate's name lah. And then there will be a secret ballot that is held between the Malay rulers, and then if there is at least 5 votes from the Malay rulers, the YDPA is crowned as the official YDPA. Okay, and this will repeat for the deputy of the YDPA lah. Okay, macam tu. So what are the powers of the YDPA? In Article 32, the YDPA is the highest ruler of the Federation or of Malaysia, and His Majesty has a few discretionary powers. Discretionary powers is powers that are at discretion of the prime YDPA. That do not require consultation or any advice from other parties. Okay. First is to appoint the Prime Minister. Second is to disagree for the request of the dissolution of Parliament that we have discussed this now. And third is to call the meeting at the Conference of Rulers on the privileges of their highnesses, if I'm not mistaken lah, macam tu. Okay. The YDPA is also the ruler of the head of military and also the head of Islam for his state and the states without rulers of states, and also he has the power to appoint judges. Okay, to settle bab 3 chapter 3. Now looking at now we're looking at chapter 4, which is the branches of Malaysian government. The branches of Malaysian government is same as other governments in the world. It has 3 branches. First is the executive. Executive has 4 parts to the branch. First is YDPA, which is the nominal executive. The YDPA is the supreme head of the land, and also supreme head of the land, HOS, apa tu? Head of state. Head of state. The YDPA is the head of state and the supreme head of the land under Article 2, Clause 1. He is appointed rotationally every 5 years, and some of his powers, his functions in Article 39, and also his powers are limited by Article 40, Clause 1. Okay, saya tengok kejap saya lupa dia punya kuasa dia apa. Okay, so Article 39 merely states that the executive authority of the Federation shall be vested by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. The limitation 40 clause 1 basically states that His Majesty has to receive a few advice on executing his decisions. However, as we have established, he has a few discretionary powers under Article 40 clause 2. Okay, that is the first that is the first party of the executive branch in the Malaysian government. Secondly, bawah dia is the Prime Minister. This is the real executive. This now is nominal. Nominal is just a symbolic. He constitutionally enjoys all powers, but the real executive is the one who actually administers the pentadbiran dekat negara tersebut. So in this case, in Malaysia's case, is the Prime Minister. He is the head of government under Article 43 Clause 2A, and he is appointed based on these conditions, which is he must be a member of the House of Representatives. 43 Clause 2A, he must command the confidence of the Parliament. Also under 43 Clause 2A, and lastly, he must be a Malaysian citizen. This is under Article 43 Clause 7. There is the second party to the executive branch. Third is the Cabinet Minister. They are the highest policy making body and advisory board of the YDPA. They are led by the Prime Minister. and they are appointed after the appointment of the Prime Minister, which is outlined under Article 43, Clause 2, A and B. They have a few functions. The Cabinet has a few functions. They first coordinate governmental policies. They are the ones who actually coordinate lah these policies. They move it around. Secondly, they discuss public interest issues, and thirdly, they are an advisory board of the YDPA. Lastly, the last party of the executive branch is the public service. The public service execute governmental policies that are set out by the Cabinet. Secondly, they are led by the Chief Secretary, iaitu Setiausaha Agung, and there are a few types and examples of public service under Article 132 of the Federal Constitution. Dia just basically cakap yang dia terdiri daripada polis, daripada bomber and all that lah. Okay, next. This is the part from here on out. This is the part that is not included in the midterms but included in the finals. Legislature. Legislature is vested upon the Parliament, which is the highest national legislative body. This is under Article 44. It is comprised of three parties. First is the YDPA, which has the power to summon, prorogue and dissolve the Parliament. So these are outlined under Article 155, Clause 1, Clause 4 and also Clause 2. His Majesty also has the power to assent a bill under Article 66, Clause 4. However, the limitation of this power of ascension of the bills is under Article 66, Clause 4A, whereby, if we remember, this is also included in LAW083 last sem. If the YDPA does not assent a bill within 30 days, after that 30 days, the bill is also considered as law. So I asked my lecturer, and his response was the ascension of the bill is basically a symbolic of the involvement of the YDPA in the lawmaking process, because we have kita ada dua system of government. We have the constitution yang perlembagaan, and also monarchy. So they want to include YDPA in the lawmaking process lah, so to say, macam tu. Okay, and His Majesty also has the power to appoint senators, 45 Clause 2, and that's about it. Okay, secondly is the House of Senate, or the Senate lah, Senate. These are comprised of people with distinguished public service or distinction in their profession. There are a few requirements on becoming a member of the House of Senate, which is under Article 47 and 48. There are 5 main requirements. First, they must be a citizen, must be of sound mind. Third, they must not be declared bankrupt. Fourth, they cannot be a member of the House of Representatives because there are 2 different houses. And fifth, they are in office for a term of 3 years with a maximum of 2 terms. Okay, macam tu. That is the House of Representatives. That is the House of Senate. Now, let's look at House of Representatives under Article 46, and the House of Representatives comprises of federal constituencies from Election Commission. Basically, wakil rakyat mengikut area yang dipilih oleh Suruhanjaya Pilihan Raya. They last for 5 years. The House of Representatives will last for 5 years, and there are few requirements lah, which is under Article 47 and also 48. I'm guessing these are the same requirements lah, sebab saya pun tak baca dia punya dia punya artikel dekat FC, tapi sebab dia sama dengan House of Senate punya, I'm guessing it's the same. Again, please do your research as well. And disqualification. How can someone be disqualified from the House of Representatives? This is the disqualification is done by the YDPA under Article 48 Clause 3, and the reasons outlined for the disqualification from the House of Representatives is under Article 48 Clause 1 from A till F. Okay, now let's look at the functions of the Parliament. There are 4 main functions. First is its legislative function. It is the lawmaking body. Second is it is the arena of public discussion for public interest. Third, it is the supervisory power. They have the power to supervise whether there is any law that is inconsistent with the law passed by the parliament, if I'm not mistaken. So let me check. Okay, bukan. Supervisory power is when the power of the parliament to ask for any ministers, sebab minister kan also member of the House of Representatives. They can ask the ministers to explain either orally or in writing the justifications of certain laws that they have enacted in their ministries. Okay, and lastly, they also decide on government budgets. Okay, next, let's look at the privileges of parliament. Article 63 is outlining the privileges of parliament. Yes, tapi it is subject to 63 clause 4. So saya buka lah sebab dalam manual tak banyak explanation kan. Okay, 63. Okay, saya akan baca beberapa je lah because there are 5 clauses. First, the validity of any proceedings in either House of Parliament or any committee thereof shall not be questioned by any court. And secondly, no person shall be liable to any proceedings in any court in respect to anything said or any vote given by him when taking part in any proceedings in either House of Parliament or any committee thereof. Okay, so dua benda tu basically first kali adalah apa-apa yang disebutkan dan dibincangkan di dalam parlimen tidak boleh dipersoalkan di dalam court. Secondly, the second clause, clause 2, says that there is no nothing said in the parliament can be held accountable against the person saying it. Macam tu. Maksudnya senang cerita diorang boleh lah cakap apa yang diorang nak, but it is subject to clause 4 of article 63, which is okay, saya baca. Clause 2 shall not apply to any person charged with an offence under the law passed by the parliament under clause 4 of article 10 or with an offence under the Sedition Act as amended by the Emergency Ordinance number 45. So senang cerita, benda-benda yang menghasut di dalam akta hasutan tak boleh. Macam itulah. Okay, let's look at the case of Mark Coding against public prosecutor, where accused, a member of parliament, was charged and found guilty for uttering seditious words in the parliament, which is an offence punishable under section 4 subsection 1b of the Sedition Act 1948. Okay, that's about it. Let's look at a few related concepts in the parliament. First is ministerial responsibility. This means that the ministers are responsible to their own ministries. Setiap menteri bertanggungjawab terhadap kementerian mereka sendiri, and this is outlined under Article 43, Clause 3 of the Federal Constitution, which states that the cabinet shall be collectively responsible to the parliament. Okay. Secondly, the parliament can also ask cabinet members on decisions regarding their ministries, and when drafting the legislation, also the policies, public interest is top priority. Secondly, this is not ministerial responsibility, but it's rather collective responsibility. This means that cabinet members must support cabinets and governmental decisions. They can disagree during the process of lawmaking, but after the law has been passed, they must respect it. Okay, those are the two related concepts regarding parliaments. And third and final branch of the government is the judiciary. The judiciary is the sacrosanct branch of the government. So senang cerita dia macam satu branch yang terjaga rapi lah, senang cerita, sebab dia satu branch yang penting. Okay, and it is headed by the Chief Justice. Chief Justice resides in the Federal Court, and it is also comprised of the chief judges and all that in the lower courts lah. Okay, a few functions of the judiciary is there are 4. First is to administer justice. Secondly is to interpret laws. Third is to protect the supremacy of the Federal Constitution, because remember, they have the power to declare any law that is inconsistent with the FC to be void. So they are the protectors of the supremacy of the federal constitution. And fourth, they protect human rights. How? By administering justice. Macam itulah. This is related to the independence of the judicial independence. So judicial independence adalah macam kebebasan pihak ataupun parti judiciary lah senang cerita. Okay, there are a few independence. These are outlined under Article 132, 125, 126 and also 127. Article saya akan baca semualah senang cerita. Article 132 2A, they hold office not at the pleasure of the YDPA. So it's secure lah, the tenure is secure. Article 151 Article 125 clause 1, the retirement age for judges is 66. 125 clause 3, 4, 5, they have a permanent tenure. 125 clause 6, the salary that is given through a consolidated fund, which is an agreed upon fund and not based on annual governmental agreements. Macam tu. 125 clause 7, the salaries cannot be altered to the judges punya disadvantage. Article 126, they have the power to punish for contempt of court. Contempt of court is, senang cerita, adalah anyone who professes their disdain on the court. And 127 is the parliament cannot discuss the judges' conduct in their proceedings. Okay. So with the independence of the court and also the judges comes the impartiality of the judges itself. So the judges cannot be a judge for their own cause, which is under the Latin maxim nemo jude in causa sua. They cannot be a judge for their own cause, and this can be seen in the case of public prosecutor against Anwar Ibrahim, where the judge's behaviour was perceived as an embarrassment to the judicial system. Okay, there are a few requirements for impartiality of judges, which is under Article 125 clause 3B. First, they cannot put their private interest above public interest. Secondly, they cannot behave in a way that causes reasonable suspicion. Third, they cannot conduct dishonestly, because obviously lah, kalau kau part of the judiciary, kau mestilah honest though. And then fourth, they cannot lack efficiency. And fifth, they cannot disobey administrative orders. Okay, done with chapter 4. Now let's look at chapter 5 and 6, which is separation of powers. Chapter 5 and 6. 5 is separation of powers. Okay, separation of powers is apa yang kita duk cakap dalam parliamentary system all along. But now we're looking at how it checks and balances each other, as well as a bit of history about the separation of powers. So in separation of powers, we are looking at two theories which are proposed by two different people. First is by a guy named Baron de Montesquieu. So he proposed a theory that gives liberty to the three branches of government. So it gives complete independence and also complete freedom to the three branches of government. And the independence, the independence is divided into three. First is institutional liberty, which is basically he wants to separate the three branches of government into three separate bodies which do not overlap each other. Secondly is functional separation. There shall be no overlapping. There shall be no overlapping on two branches, and no branch is superior to another. And third, separation of personnel. A member of one branch cannot be a member of another branch simultaneously. They must be only dedicated to one branch only. Macam tu. However, there is also another theory proposed by James Madison. So James Madison says that there must be a check and balance between the branches, and that too much governmental power can lead to abuse. So he opposes the theory proposed by Baron de Montesquieu. He gave his own theory that says that we cannot have the separation of powers because it can lead to tyranny and also abuse of power, and we have to somehow overlap these three branches so that it can check and balance each other. Macam tu. So these are the two theories that have been proposed. And in Malaysia, we implement James Madison's theory, and let's look at how the three branches of government that we have discussed earlier check and balance each other out. Let's look at first the legislative against the executive. So how does the legislative and the executive compare to each other? So in terms of function, the legislative is plays a role in enacting laws, while the executive is to execute the law. And under Article 44, the authority of legislation is vested upon the Parliament. However, in Article 39 and 40 clause 1, the authority of the executive is vested upon the YDPA. Okay, and Article 74 clause 1 and the 9th schedule in the Federal Constitution outlines the matters that the Parliament can legislate upon. However, in Article 80 of the Federal Constitution, saya tak ingat kita cakap pasal apa, so let's look at it. Oh, okay. Distribution of executive power. So, salah. Itulah saya tak baca sangat. So, kita boleh nampak yang dua benda ni adalah dua benda yang sangat berbeza and led by different people with different legislations. Okay. However, the membership of the legislative and executive has an overlap. This is seen in Article 43, Clause 2A and B, whereby the legislative and also the executive are led by the This can be seen in Article 43, Clause 2A and B, whereby it says that the executive is led by the PM and his cabinet, which are both members of the Parliament. Macam kita dah cakap tadi, both of the members of both leaders of the executive branch are actually members of the cabinet or of the members of the Parliament. So there is dual citizenship tau. Dia macam seorang tu akan part of dua branch yang berasingan macam tu. So that is where the overlapping occurs. And it is bound by Article 43 Clause 3. 43 Clause 3, yang macam saya cakap tadi lah, the cabinet shall be collectively responsible to the Parliament. Yang dia kata yang the Parliament can ask for any cabinet members to explain their justification on a few policies made by them. Macam tu. So we can see in Malaysia, the Judiciary is the sacrosanct branch, the branch that enjoys full independence. However, whereas in the case of the executive and also the legislative branch, there is a bit of overlapping in terms of membership. Macam tu. So that is where the check and balance occurs. Let's look at now the functions of executive against the judiciary. Executive is, macam tadi saya cakap, it's to execute the law, and the authority is vested upon the YDPA as outlined in Article 39 and also 40 clause 1. And the composition of the executive branch is the YDPA, YDPA, Prime Minister, Cabinet and also Public Service. However, in the judiciary branch, they are tasked to interpret the law. So their role is to interpret the law as opposed to the function of the executive to execute the law. So there is the difference there. It is also under Article 121. Tak ingat lagi. Sekejap. Okay, judicial power in Malaysia. So it basically states there must be courts in Sabah and Sarawak and all that lah. Okay, and it is comprised of judges. So kita boleh nampak the executive and the judiciary are two separate branches with different criteria, different features and all that. So it's two different independent bodies from each other. Macam tu. Next, the check and balance between the executive and also the legislative bodies. Okay, did I miss anything? I don't think so. I think I missed something lah. Okay, last. Kita dah check legislative and also the executive. We have also looked at the executive against the judiciary. Now let's look at the legislative against the judiciary. Okay, so legislative, they have the task to enact the law, and of course the authority is vested upon the parliament under Article 44. Article 74 clause 1, and also the 9th schedule is the subject matter that the parliament can legislate upon. And however, in the judiciary punya branch, their role is to interpret the law, and Article 121 is the judicial power. Article 127 is the parliament cannot discuss the judge's conduct in their proceedings, and the membership of the legislative is okay. The special thing about the legislative branch punya membership is the member of the parliament cannot be the judge of any judicial body. Macam tu lah. Macam tadi kita tengok, the member of the legislative is also member of the executive. However, they cannot be the member of the judiciary. Macam tu. Okay, so it's complete lah. We've looked at L against J, we have looked at E against J, and also L versus E. So that's it. Now let's look at some of the check and balance that have happened in our government lah. So let's look at let's look at the executive branch dulu. The check and balance done by the executive branch is the YDPA, and also the Prime Minister can appoint members of the legislative and judiciary. And Article 42, the YDPA can grant pardon. Pardon ni macam apa nama dia? Kalau someone tu dah masuk ke satu proceeding, dia boleh dapat pardon tu macam pelepasan tau daripada YDPA, macam tu. So dia dibebaskan daripada charge. So correct me if I'm wrong lah, tapi I'm pretty sure that's what it means. Secondly, the legislative branch. The check and balance done by the legislative branch is under Article 43 clause 3 is the supervisory power. They can ask the members of the cabinet to explain their justification on the policies that they have built. Under Article 43 clause 4, they can have the vote of no confidence to remove the Prime Minister and the cabinet members from office. And Article 127, they can have a substantive motion which is supported by at least a quarter of the members of the parliament to actually discuss the conduct of judges in court. So ini adalah satu specialty untuk legislative branch lah. Even though they cannot discuss about the conduct of judges, but through a substantive motion, they can have the access to do so. Okay, lastly, the judicial branch. They can declare ultra virus on any law that is inconsistent with the Federal Constitution, because remember, they safeguard the supremacy of the Federal Constitution, and this can be seen in the case of Lina Joy against Majlis Agama Islam. Basically, it states the issue in the case was which court has the jurisdiction to hear the case of Lina Joy. Okay. We have looked at the check and balance in Malaysia, which uses the flexible separation of power. Let's look at the check and balance done by a country that exercises pure separation of power. So the executive is one branch altogether, legislative another branch, and judiciary another branch. They do not intercept each other. How does it function? The country we're looking at is the United States, and there are 6 ways each of the branches can check and balance over each other. First, we're looking at how the legislative executes over the executive. The House of Representatives can impeach the president. So impeachment is basically the same as vote of no confidence lah. They can remove the president from office, and the Senate can remove the president, and they can also check the president's appointments of judges, because the president of the United States will appoint the judges in the judiciary. So the legislative can also review the appointment of judges done by the Prime Minister. Okay, the Congress can also investigate the executive, and they can refuse to pass any law that the executive wants. So that is how the legislative does the check and balance over the executive. How does it execute check and balance over the judiciary pula? The Congress can remove judges. They can also reject judicial nominees, which are calon-calon untuk menjadi judge. They can also change the system by adding or also removing courts in the judicial system. Kuat kan kuasa Congress ni. They can add a whole new type of court and also remove courts from the judicial system, and they can also change the jurisdiction of the federal court. Lastly, they can propose constitutional amendments. Okay, tu kuasa legislative pula. How does the executive do it? Upon the legislative, the executive, which is the president, can veto Congress laws. So he has the veto power to vote in Congress laws, and the executive can implement laws contrary to what the Congress wishes. So it's basically an Uno reverse card lah. You think you can do that? We can do that as well. Macam tu. How does the executive do it against the judiciary pula? Okay, they do it in a way that the president has the power to nominate judges. So he is in control of who presides the court and proceedings, and the president can give a presidential pardon, which is same as the pardon granted by the YDPA tadi lah. Okay, sekarang kita tengok judiciary pula. Dia buat ke atas legislative in whereby they can declare laws unconstitutional, and also the chief justice presides in the impeachment trials. So the chief justice yang akan jadi hakim untuk impeachment trial. Macam tu. Lastly, judiciary onto the executive. They can declare the law passed by the executive as unconstitutional, and also the chief justice presides in the impeachment trials. So kalau korang perasan, basically the judiciary punya check and balance terhadap legislative and also executive are the same lah basically in the US. Okay, macam tu. Okay, last chapter. Tapi jap, saya ada dua dalam kertas tadi, tak tahu yang. Okay, last chapter in 084, features of the federal constitution. Janji tak banyak sebab tengok ni and then ni 4 page je. Features of the federal constitution. Kita akan tengok 3 main features, which are the supremacy of the constitution, the fundamental rights of people, the position of Islam, and also the privileges of native Sabah and Sarawak. Okay, first, the supremacy of the constitution is outlined under Article 4 Clause 1, and the federal constitution has a permanent supremacy and it overrides the YDPA. So even the YDPA is bound by the federal constitution. Any inconsistent law is void, and also this can be seen macam tadi in case of Muhammad Daud against public prosecutor. That is basically everything for supremacy of the constitution. Let's look at the position of Islam pula. In Article 3 Clause 1, it states that Islam is the religion of the federation, if I'm not mistaken. However, Islamic law is not in Article 160, which is the interpretation punya article. So in Article 160, it provides an interpretation or meaning to various terms in the constitution, and Islamic law is not in Article 160. So how can we determine whether or not the Islam is the official religion of the federation? We have to look at 4 things. First is the intention of the drafters of the federal constitution itself. Orang-orang yang membuat rangka untuk constitution ni, apa kata mereka dalam kes ni. So they said that if a religion has been declared official in a state and it does not cause any hardships, there is no problem for the constitution of Malaya. Macam tu. However, the Sharia law is not the supreme law of the land. Okay, secondly, statements of leader. This is by Tunku Abdul Rahman in 1958. He said that Malaysia is not an Islamic state and Islam is merely an official religion of the state. That's all. Okay, third is the Kabul Commission proposal. As you remember, Kabul Commission is one of the commissions that actually drafted the federal constitution, and they say that Malaysia is a secular country, so it is not bound by any religion because they have to respect the other religions that are practiced in Malaysia. Lastly, case law. We're looking at the case of Mio Atikur Rahman bin Ishak dan lain-lain, lawan Fatimah binti Sihi dan lain-lain. I forgot what it's about. Okay, jap. Mio Atikur Rahman. Okay, Mio Atikur Rahman ni senang cerita, kes dia si plaintiff ni dia pakai apa tu, turban Yes, dia pakai turban pergi sekolah. And then sekolah tu dah banyak kali dah bagi tahu tak boleh pakai turban dekat sekolah. And then dia tak ikut amaran dan juga nasihat daripada sekolah tu. Dan as a result dia dibuang daripada sekolah tersebut. So he opened a case and said that so dia buka case and then senang cerita the court said that even though Islam is the religion of the federation, it is not the basic law of the land, and Article 3 imposes no limits on the power of the parliament to legislate. Islamic law is not and never was the general law of the land, either at the federal or state level, and it applies only to Muslims and only to areas outlined in item 1 of list 2 of the 9th schedule. So senang cerita, itulah dia punya benda. That's how we can determine lah whether or not Islam is whether or not Malaysia is an Islamic country. Okay, let's look at the freedom of religion. It is under Article 11 clause 1. We have three main freedom in terms of religion. First is the right, freedom to profess. Second, practice. And third is propagate. Profess is basically mengisytiharkan agama seseorang. However, there is an issue on the phrase of his religion. So in Article 11 clause 1, it states that, sekejap, saya bacalah senang. Okay, Article 11 clause 1 states that every person has the right to profess and practice his religion, and subject to clause 4, propagate it. So the phrase his religion is used to be a very problematic phrase lah, as seen in the case of Lina Joy against Mawid and lain-lain. Macam dia senang cerita nak kata yang okay, kalau seseorang tu Islam and dia mengisytiharkan diri dia sebagai seorang yang bukan Islam, as in the case of Lina Joy, adakah dia sekarang ni bukan Islam ataupun dia still Islam? Macam tu. That's basically the gist of the issue lah. Okay. Secondly, to practice his religion. This is limited by the public order and the public interest of the public. And this can be seen in the case of Hajah Halimatus Sa'diyah against the private security. Sekejap, tak ingat. Public Service Commission. Hajah Halimatus Sa'diyah against Public Service Commission. So, we have to remember, in the freedom to practice religion, it is only the basic practices of that religion, that particular religion. Contohnya, dalam kes Hajah Halimatus Sa'diyah ni, si Hajah Halimatus Sa'diyah ni, dia pakai purdah tau, dan dia adalah part of the public service. And since pemakaian purdah adalah bukan satu basic practice di dalam Islam, the 5 pillars of Islam, dia tak termasuk pun dalam benda tu, dalam rukun Islam, maka it is not a fundamental freedom for the people. Sebab the polisi untuk masuk ke dalam public service adalah dia, macam senang cerita, undang-undang dia ataupun peraturan dia tak boleh pakai purdah lah, and dia langgar. Tapi dia kata yang, oh, saya ada right untuk practice religion. Tapi tak, sebab the rights to practice the religion only extends to basic practices. Macam tu. Okay, last, thirdly is to propagate his religion. So the propagation of a religion is limited by Article 11 clause 4, which basically states that the other religions cannot be propagated onto Muslims, but Muslims can propagate their religion to others. This is to protect the sanctity of the religion of Islam lah sebenarnya cerita. And this can be seen in the case of Sulaiman Takrib against Kerajaan Negeri Terengganu, Kerajaan Malaysia, which is the intervener, and also others. Tak ingat dia pasal apa. This basically is a statement that states that any argument that any law that seeks to control the propagation of doctrines and beliefs among persons professing the religion of Islam is unconstitutional because it is inconsistent with Article 11 or any other provision is doomed to fail from the start. Okay, now let's look at the civil court versus the Sharia court, which is the conflict between the jurisdictions. Okay, this is under Article 121 Clause 1A. To prevent the conflict of jurisdiction, the civil court has its own jurisdiction, also the Sharia court has its own jurisdiction. So dua bidang kuasa yang berbeza lah supaya tak ada konflik yang berlaku. Okay, this can be seen in the case of Nafsiyah against Abdul Majid. Sekejap, kalau tak silap lah, sekejap Okay, the plaintiff brought an action for damages for breach of promise to marry on the ground that she had been seduced by the defendant and she had given birth to a child. So the High Court decided it has jurisdiction to hear the case and awarded damages for RM1,200. Senang cerita, dia kena the Sharia Court ada jurisdiction on hal-hal tertentu, tapi the Civil Court pun ada jurisdiction on hal-hal tertentu. Senang cerita macam tu lah. Okay, okay, the effects of Article 121 Clause 1A. Okay, dulu Article 121 ni dia tak ada amendment. So as a result, dulu the Civil Court and the Sharia Court tak ada distinction tau on their jurisdiction. Tapi ada amendment, and the effect is Article 121 Clause 1A dicipta, and the effects of the amendment, there are three. One, the Civil Court cannot interfere with Sharia Court. Second, only Muslims go to the Sharia Court. And third, the items listed in Para 1 of List 2 of the 9th schedule is not under civil jurisdiction. Okay, let's look at the administration of Islamic law, Article 3 Clause 2. Itu saja. Okay, now we are looking at the Conference of CIR, Council of Islamic Religion, ataupun senang cerita dalam BM adalah Majlis Agama Islam, Council of Islamic Religion. There are a few functions. First is to advise YDPA. They also collect zakat. They also handle the wills of deceased Muslims, and also they promote well-being in the Muslim community. Now let's look at Mufti. Mufti is in every state and they can issue fatwa. Fatwa is the consensus, bukan consensus tau, tapi opinion of the Mufti lah. So as you can see, the requirements of being a mufti are very high lah. Diorang kena betul-betul berpengetahuan dalam agama Islam lah to become a mufti. Okay, they are appointed by the YDPA on the advice of the Prime Minister, and there are 4 core functions of a mufti. First is to advise the YDPA on Islamic law. Second, they give out fatwa. Third, they must also conduct research before giving out fatwa. And fourth, they can also modify, amend or revoke any fatwa that they have keluarkan. Saya cerita macam tu. Okay, sekarang Sharia Court. The Sharia Court only has jurisdictions over Muslim, and it has jurisdiction on criminal and also civil Sharia cases. Itu saja untuk Sharia Court. Okay, sekarang kita akan tengok fundamental rights. Fundamental rights extend from Article 5 to Article 13 of the Federal Constitution, and we're looking at it one by one now. First, fundamental rights, Article 5, life and personal liberty. So life covers all facets which are integral to life itself. This is explained in the case of Tan Teck Seng lah. So what I just said was in the case of Tan Teck Seng. And life also encompasses the right to livelihood. Senang cerita kerja, macam tu. And can be taken away by law. Kalau kita ada buat apa-apa kesalahan, the right to life can be taken away by the court. Okay, that is life. Now let's look at personal liberty. In the case of Government of Malaysia and others against LAW084, I can't remember what this was about. Mana aku dapat ni? Entah, aku tak tahu aku dapat mana. Okay, tak apalah, kita skip je lah. Okay, okay, untuk personal liberty, there are a few aspects lah of personal liberty. First is habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is defined as to bring the body. So basically habeas corpus ni is to release unlawful detention. Habeas corpus ni adalah satu principle ataupun prinsip yang digunakan oleh court untuk melepaskan sesiapa yang ditahan tanpa apa-apa sebab. Macam tu. Secondly, the right to be informed on the grounds of arrest. So anyone that is arrested must be informed on the grounds of arrest orally ataupun orally lah senang cerita. This can be seen in the case of Abdul Rahman against Tan Joko, whereby a person arrested on suspicion of committing an offence is entitled to immediately know the reason for his arrest. It was also held that if the reason was withheld, the arrest and detention would amount to false imprisonment until the time he was told the reason. So, unless the person is told about his grounds of arrest, the arrest itself counts as false imprisonment. The third criteria or third aspect to rights to personal liberty is the right to consult and be defended by a legal practitioner of one's own choice. So this is basically self-explanatory lah. Bila kau ditahan, kau ada hak untuk didengari dan juga dipertahankan oleh seseorang lawyer, macam tu. And fourth is the right to be brought before a magistrate within 24 hours. So between the time that you are arrested until the time that you are charged, you must be brought upon to a magistrate, which is a judge lah senang cerita, within 24 hours. This only applies to citizens, where for non-citizens the time is extended to 14 days. Okay, let's look at Article 6 pula, freedom from slavery and forced labour. A slave is someone who is completely subservient to a dominating influence, and forced labour is someone who is forced to work using violence and intimidation. So prohibition untuk kedua-dua benda ni lah senang cerita. Secondly pula, yang Article 7, retrospective criminal laws and repeated trials. So this is protection on retrospective criminal laws and repeated trials. For banyak salah cakap lah. Retrospective bukan respective. For retrospective criminal laws, the punishment cannot be imposed retrospectively. So susah nak faham lah, so saya senang cerita explain macam ni lah. So retrospective criminal laws ni, kalau semalam dan juga hari ni saya kalau semalam undang-undang kata yang kalau saya mencuri RM5 saya masuk penjara 5 tahun. Tapi hari ni saya mencuri dan macam mana? Reset. Hari ni saya mencuri dan ikut undang-undang mencuri ni akan dihukum dengan penjara 5 tahun. Lepas tu saya ditahan hari ni, saya dibicarakan esok pula ada undang-undang baru. Dia kata yang mencuri ni akan dipenjarakan selama 10 tahun. Even though saya dibicarakan pada esok harinya, however, undang-undang yang akan digunakan dalam perbicaraan tersebut adalah undang-undang yang sebelum dikeluarkan. Macam tu. It must be the law that is used when the offence is committed, not during the trial. Itu. So itu basically maksud dia. And we can look at in the case of public prosecutor against Muhammad Ismail. I can't remember what it was about. So dalam kes ni, dia punya offence was punishable by death or life imprisonment at the discretion of the judge. An amendment of the law leaving only the death penalty enacted subsequent to the offence but prior to sentencing, and this cannot be applicable to the accused. Sebenarnya cerita macam saya cakap tadi lah, apa yang saya cerita tadi, that hypothetical punya situation applies in the case of PP against Muhammad Ismail. For repeated trials pula, repeated trials ni, the person must be convicted or acquitted first before double jeopardy. Double jeopardy ni basically adalah repeated trials. Repeated trials for the same offence on the same set of facts. This cannot happen. So a repeated trial can only happen, or a double jeopardy lah sebenarnya, can only happen if the person is convicted of an offence and they want to open another case for another offence regardless of the same facts or different facts, or if he is acquitted first, dia dilepaskan dan offence dan kes baru nak dibuka. Macam tu. However, there are few exceptions lah under Article 7 Clause 2. Ada banyak lah. Antaranya adalah DNAA, discharge not amount to acquittal, yang mana DNAA ni adalah basically penangguhan untuk satu proceeding. Dia bukan pelepasan sepenuhnya, dia dilepaskan mungkin sebab contoh ada saksi yang tak datang ataupun bukti tak cukup, macam tu. So dia ditangguhkan tau, dia punya perbicaraan, macam tu lah. Tapi dia bukan dilepaskan tau, dia bukan dibebaskan, dia hanya ditangguhkan. Okay, so dia banyak lah, banyak exception. Boleh baca dekat Federal Constitution lah senang cerita. And Article 8 is equality. Equality basically says that all people are equal before the law, and this can be seen in the case of Datuk Haji Harun against public prosecutor. Mana berapa ni? Oh, dia kata the court said that the equality provision is not absolute. It does not mean that all laws must apply uniformly to all persons in all circumstances everywhere. Itu sajalah untuk kesnya. Okay, Article 9 pula, prohibition of banishment and freedom of movement. Okay, for citizens, every citizen is immune from banishment unless he is stripped of his citizenship. And for freedom of movement, in the case of Asa Singh against Menteri Besar Johor, they state that a person can freely move and reside anywhere within the Federation of Malaya, but can be restricted on grounds of public order. So the restriction of freedom of movement can be seen paling senang gila sewaktu PKP, yang mana government telah pun mengimpose beberapa restriction on our freedom of movement in order to protect the public order and also public interest, untuk prevent the virus from spreading, macam tu. Okay, itu saja. Article 10, freedom of SAA, speech, assembly and also association. So it states that in the case of Dun Kelantan against Nordin Saleh, senang cerita Nordin Saleh ni adalah dia ahli Dun Kelantan yang berada di parti pembangkang, tetapi di dalam parlimen pula dia adalah dalam parti kerajaan. So senang cerita dia lompat parti, masuk daripada parti pembangkang ke parti kerajaan, dan benda tu infringe ataupun benda tu violate freedom of association. Itu sajalah. Okay. The parliament can also restrict the freedom of speech on grounds of public order and security. So a few restrictions done by the parliament to protect against kucak-kacir adalah dalam Printing Presses and Publications Act 1984, where they are against undesirable publications. This is under section 7. So undesirable publications are publications that are likely to cause alarm to public order, and once the publication is prohibited, owning a copy of the publication is punishable by fine. Macam tu. Secondly is the Sedition Act 1948. Sedition Act 1948 comprises of words that are contempt to any ruler, contempt of any ruler, contempt of any law, and also to raise disaffection amongst inhabitants of Malaysia, and lastly to promote hostility among races. So these two are the restrictions, the few examples of the restrictions imposed by the parliament onto freedom of speech lah sebenarnya. Okay, this can be seen in the case of public prosecutor against Adam Adli Abdul Halim and others. So in this case, there was a tunjuk perasaan a few days after the election of Najib Abdul Razak lah. semasa dia naik menjadi Prime Minister. So dia tunjuk perasaan dan dia ditahan under freedom of speech, sebab dia macam akan kucak-kacirkan orang lah senang cerita. Lepas tu dia kata yang benda tu bukan sedition pun, bukannya satu hasutan pun. Dia adalah hanya expressing concerns on to the people. Contoh. Okay, freedom of religion. Hui, penat tu. Freedom of religion in article 11. This is in the case of Hajah Halimatul Sa'diah. Ni macam yang tadi saya dah explain dah tadi. Rights to education, article 12. This only applies to citizens and can only apply for secondary and also primary education level. So tertiary education level will not apply under article 12. And okay, that's about it. Property pula, rights to property, article 13. Every person has the rights to property but can be deprived lawfully. Okay. And then it also states that if a property is acquired or used, there must be an adequate compensation. Okay, this can be seen in the case of Sagong bin Tasi and others against Kerajaan Negeri Selangor and others. Okay, let's look at the last part of the features of the Constitution, which is the special privileges of Sabah and Sarawak. This is under Article 153. Article 153 explains that it is the responsibility of the YDPA to safeguard the special positions of the Malays and natives of Sabah and Sarawak, as well as the legitimate interests of other communities. Okay. Under Article 160, a Malay is defined as a person who is in the religion of Islam, habitually speaks Malay, conforms to the Malay custom, and there is also one more requirement that is too long to explain. And that's about it for Malay. And in Article 161A, the definition of a Sabahan and a Sarawakian is given. So a Sabahan is a citizen that is a child or a grandchild to an indigenous race from Sabah, and is also born in Sabah and is also born in Sabah, or the dad lives in Sabah during his birth. Macam tu. So dia adalah warga negara, adalah anak ataupun cucu kepada seseorang yang berbangsa daripada Sabah, dan juga dia lahir di Sabah ataupun dia punya ayah tinggal di Sabah semasa dia dilahirkan. Macam tu. Okay, untuk Sarawak pula, they have to be a citizen and they have to belong to a race of or a mix of races listed in Article 161E. Ada banyak lah, banyak gila. So boleh tengok lah dekat pada Constitution sendiri. Okay, let's look at special privileges given to them. This is under Article 153, which states that the YDPA must ensure that these rights have to be safeguarded. A few examples of the safeguards and also the privileges are: first, the tertiary education quota. There must be a quota for tertiary education. Secondly, there must be a position in public service. Third, they must be given governmental scholarships and also training. And fourth, they must be given trade licenses lah. Permit tau, lesen berdagang kat tak silap. However, there are a few limitations to the privileges juga. So basically, the limitations boil down to the YDPA must also ensure the public interest and also interest of other parties are safeguarded and are also protected lah, senang cerita. The limitations, they cannot deprive others, and they must also protect other people's interests. They cannot deprive other people's rights, and also they must be given impartial treatment. Tak boleh ada special treatment lah, even though they have been given privileges. Okay, itu saja untuk LAW084, dan ini adalah video terakhir yang anda akan nampak background macam ni. So next video saya tak tahu lagi kat mana, mungkin dekat Shah Alam insyaAllah. And itu saja untuk perjalanan saya di Pusat Sains Dengkil. Thank you for watching. Good luck for your exams, and that's about it. See ya.